Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor is one of those games that just does about everything right in the player's eyes. It has a unique approach to its storytelling with this visual novel-inspired dialogue, creativity around all of its SRPG combat, mechanics with loads of customization, outstanding character development, and a clear grasp on how it wants to present the themes in a game. When combined all together, they create one of the most, if not the most accessible and well-rounded Megami Tensei games in the entire franchise. Yet despite the number of positive remarks and being a personal favorite to many, is Devil Survivor actually one of the strongest titles in the franchise? Well, that's what we'll find out in this episode of Aligning Megami Tensei. Also, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and all that neat stuff. Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor 1 is a tactical role-playing game released in 2009 for the Nintendo DS. It was developed to appeal to newcomers of strategy games, while still incorporating familiar elements of Shin Megami Tensei. Being that Devil Survivor was the first Megami Tensei game released on the DS, this was seen as Atlus's chance to right the wrongs of previous attempts to target a different market, and properly create a game that could connect to a new audience using the handheld giant. With its utilization in the DS's dual screens, the game not only succeeding in adding new light in the game mechanics and storytelling, but also managed to do this without sacrificing many of the trademark features and vibes that many have cherished. What's more intriguing is that Atlus decided to hand off the development responsibilities to the staff from the recent Careersoft merger, which I would say is rather risky. Upon its release, the game would receive generally positive reviews, being praised for its originality, characters, and deep storytelling. Later on, a sequel game, Devil Survivor 2, would be released on the DS, as well as an enhanced 3DS port, Devil Survivor Overclocked. Since then, the DS and 3DS Devil Survivor games have acquired a massive following and are often regarded as some of the best in the franchise. Now, Devil Survivor takes a unique approach with its story, with the entirety taking place as the demon invasion is happening. This diverges from the traditional sense of most Shin Megami Tensei narratives and helps swing the focus towards the growing desperation and a constant dread hanging over your head. And this is only amplified as uncertainty of survival and loss of hope begin to shift into the minds of those trapped in the city. One thing the game does exceptionally well is how it sets up the chaos almost immediately and throws the player directly into the beginning stages of this haunting experience. Within the first hours, the protagonist and his two friends will each receive a mysterious device from your cousin, who's also been MIA. Without much of a clue as to what it does or any idea where your cousin may be, you'll take it upon yourselves to investigate further into what it does and why you received it. Not too long into your investigation, you'll find out the true meaning that the person possessing these devices will have the ability to summon, interact, and fight against demons that have started to invade Tokyo. It's also at this point where we start to notice that our protagonist has a few extra abilities as well. The following day, the city is forced to go under a mandatory lockdown imposed by the Japanese ground self-defense forces. In addition to this, the means to food, communication, and the chance for survival have all essentially been cut off, setting up the chaos that's going to erupt over the coming days. Now trapped inside the city, your group begins their journey towards survival and finding a resolution before extreme measures are taken. The situation only worsens after news of the SDF's plans to demolish the city in 7 days breaks wind, causing more people to take matters into their own hands. This not only puts your party against waves of demons, but against other humans and groups trying to survive and push forth their own ideologies. And because of this 7-day countdown, we get to see this day-to-day progression of the situation getting worse as new details about the events begin to emerge. With many unable to cope with the sense of hopelessness and terrifying end looming over them, in addition to unresolved personal problems, the desperation of the city fills the air. The only remaining option they have is to take matters into their own hands, and we see the broken mentality start to influence several actions and beliefs during the worsening situation. What I love most about this day-to-day progression is how it perfectly shows how disorder develops and influences human behavior when placed in an extremely hopeless situation. But on top of that, it serves as a great segue into what makes Devil Survivor so distinct, and that's its meaningful decision making. Now, most Megami Tensei games provide some sort of decision making. However, due to the nature of the events taking place in Devil Survivor 1, as well as 2, the game set a different standard when it comes to this in my opinion. In addition to the ongoing demon invasion, your party is always fighting against time, essentially racing against the clock to find a solution before the SDF steps in. And in order to prevent the worst case scenario, every action has an actual consequence, whether you like it or not. This is what makes both Devil Survivor games, although much more with Devil Survivor 1, such a memorable experience, as not only does it throw a heavy-hitting scenario at you, but it matches that with heavy-hitting decisions every step of the way. This also feels like the most important yet heavily underappreciated aspect of both its story and gameplay. Not only that, but it greatly amplifies the uneasy and doubt-filled nature of the situation even further. And essentially the game is putting the player under the same circumstances as the protagonist, not allowing them to fully contemplate alternatives beyond a certain level of exception, as in some cases waiting too long or choosing a different action may result in a permanent consequence. This is no takesy-backsies at its finest. However, Devil Survivor doubles down on this with the main protagonist's death clock ability, which allows him to see how many days a person has left to live. And with no number exceeding the 7-day deadline set by the SDF, the pessimistic outlook and desperation to survive among your group continues to increase. The eerie sense of knowing when someone will die is also a nerve-shaking detail that instills an entirely different fear from the rest of the people trapped in the city. Yet there is a silver lining to a person's death clock though. Intervening may influence a change in how long a person has left to live. That said, it could also alter yours as well, casting doubt on if helping another person is really the best solution. Yet the 7-day countdown and death clocks aren't the only time-based events you will try to prevent, as each morning your comp will send a notification providing updates on minor events that will occur throughout the day. These warnings range from minor nuisances to more story-impacting trials. Of course, most if not all of these warnings can be ignored, but once they pass, they pass. Choosing to focus on something else will cause time to advance in the game, narrowing your window of opportunity to prevent these warnings. And like I mentioned, these actions have consequences. Choosing to ignore these will impact available routes, information, and members that can join your party. You might also miss out on some great character development, which trust me, you don't want to miss. While a number of aspects of the game are influenced by these warnings, it's also important to highlight that a good amount of these minor events serve as a great distraction from some of the weaker points of the game. Having said that, the impact each dilemma, no matter the severity has on the decision making and the outcomes they bring, makes it one of the more significant features of all Megami Tensei games in my opinion. And while I may find this to be the most important part of the game, it isn't my favorite. No, that belongs to the characters. Without a doubt, this is the strongest, most well-rounded set of characters that a Megami Tensei game has ever made. At least from the games I've played so far. From the character designs to the constant development of the main and supporting cast, it's clear how impactful the story and themes thrive off this group. It's not often where I can confidently say that I found the entire group to be enjoyable, and I mean the entire group. Yeah, I know some people have their issues with Midori or Keisuke, but they both executed their roles to a T. And as I mentioned earlier, the characters aren't just struggling with the underlying doom and unknown fear that awaits them, but they're also still struggling with personal issues and insecurities from prior, and this made it much easier to organically connect with them. Even if it was with just one character or the details were minor, it always felt like there was someone every player could connect to. Development really just seemed to prioritize creating an easy to identify with group. From my own experience, I found myself personally fond of characters like Jin and Haru. However, there was another character that stood out to me the most, and that was Honda, who's desperate to escape Tokyo by any means to be there by his son's side during an important operation. And as a father myself, I understand the responsibilities, sacrifices, and hardships that a parent will face. And because of this, I was able to immediately feel a strong connection with this character. While my struggles as a parent are nowhere near what Honda had to endure, I completely understand the lengths a parent would go through to take care of and be there for their child. There is more to his story that's equally as interesting, but this is what stuck out to me the most. And even though his ending results in a game over screen, dubbing it as the bad ending of the game, I'd do it again. Now, not only does getting a glimpse into the personal dilemmas of these characters just make the game more enjoyable, but it also ties back to something we discussed a bit earlier. You see, it also plays a pivotal role in depicting the city's state of mind, the growing desperation, and how many of the themes tossed in the game were molded. This not only helps the story always thrive, but bridges the gap between each and every reasoning or action, complementing the game's notion that all routes should be viable options. And ultimately, is the reason why I find this set of characters to be one of the strongest, if not the strongest in Megami Tensei. On a side note, I just wanted to mention the decision to bring in the manga artist Suzuhito Yasuda for the character designs. It was the perfect match to the game's visual novel style. Similar to my views on the personalities and development, nothing felt generic with the designs. Everyone looked unique and matched the traits of the characters seamlessly, only adding to how strong they turned out. Switching lanes a bit, when it comes to Devil Survivor's music, I'm a bit mixed overall. I initially wasn't the biggest fan, and I don't know why, but I didn't feel like everything fit. Being that Devil Survivor takes the liberty of doing a few things differently, it's no surprise that one of these changes ended up being the music, which felt more rock mixed with J-pop. While there's nothing wrong with this style of music, I just never felt like it all blended well with this game. It was missing parts that other soundtracks easily conveyed. There were times where it didn't even feel like I was playing a Shin Megami Tensei game. I know there are a lot of people that praise this part of the game, and if you're one of them, I'm happy for you. There are just a few songs that I don't enjoy that much. Don't get me wrong, there's still some great music to be found here. The overworld theme and intro are great, and it does an amazing job to match most of the atmosphere and serious tones of the game. I still find some issues with a few tracks, especially with the battle theme for some reason, but the soundtrack as a whole is pretty solid. Individually, there are a few of these that are some of my favorites. Overall though, it's not my favorite MegaTen soundtrack. It did grow on me more and more, just not enough to love it as much as others do. One aspect that makes Devil Survivor be more beginner friendly is how easy it is to use the comps. Not only do they play their role as each day moves forward and provide the only method of communication for your group, but they also work extremely well as the main hub for practically everything, from recruiting and fusing new demons, party customization, and of course the game's settings. Personally, I found its simplistic menu UI to provide a much more accessible and easier to navigate system that just about anybody can manage to use. Its new Nintendo DS design makes it much easier to draw the connection between its purpose and the player. As already mentioned earlier, these comps also provide daily updates on events set to take place during the day. At the end of it, these comps feel like the ideal device used to create a more accessible game. This accessibility does come with some negatives though, as well as some unexpected highlights, both related to the recruiting and fusion systems. If you watch my review on Shin Megami Tensei 1, you'll know that I'm a big fan of recruiting. And if you haven't watched that review, go watch it after this video. Unfortunately, Devil Survivor heavily alters and practically erases the premise of recruiting demons through negotiations entirely, with players instead bidding on demons through auctions found in their comp. On paper, this is a fun gimmick. It's different and something that I thought I could find myself enjoying. It's a fairly simple system to get used to, and I love the callbacks from past games as the bidders, which felt like a neat novelty for longtime fans. In the end though, it ended up being my least favorite change of the game. Its repetitive nature requires no real skill or luck and lacks the charm of other games when it comes to negotiations. However, this issue is also supplemented by the game's very limited demon roster. While auctions receive regular updates and new demons become available after defeating them, the lack of variety becomes apparent rather quickly. Even with unlockable auction tiers that introduce stronger demons over time, there are only an additional 45 or 50 demons in total that can be recruited through auction. While good intentions were meant with this new feature, it came at the expense of taking away one of the key pieces of Megami Tensei. Fortunately, Devil Survivor's fusion picks up a lot of the missing pieces from recruiting. New features allowing the player to carry over skills is one of the core additions that harmonized well with combat's personalization, which we'll cover in a bit. The fusion system in Devil Survivor is also one of the first, if not the first, localized Megami Tensei game to offer a search option, which if you ask me was long overdue for this to become a normalized addition. While its UI is similar to the rest of the comp, flashy animations and thorough information are not included details, creating a rather minimalistic feel. This doesn't come across as a bad thing though. Going off how phones were during that time, the Fusion app felt like it replicated an actual application from that era quite nicely. This ultimately creates an effortless process, bringing a new level of accessibility to the core mechanic entirely. Although still a victim of the small demon roster, this is to a much less extent, with the selection of unique demons making up for a good chunk of options, which is perfect for a new audience and hardcore Megami Tensei gamers. And in the end, what is often one of the most convoluted aspects of Megami Tensei was made into an easy-to-use system with a creative touch. But for most, what makes the Devil Survivor series stand out is its addictive, unique approach to the combat and party system. Taking a step away from traditional mechanics of JRPGs, Devil Survivor utilizes a hybrid-like tactical combat system. Your party will be made up of 4 members, plus 2 additional demon allies paired with each member. Both the player and the enemy take turns moving around an isometric map, finding ways to take advantage of or minimize their opponent's strategy. Several skills are also available to activate each turn to heal party members, move extra spaces, or bind an opponent. And attacking an enemy's weakness may reward you with an extra turn, while attacking the resistance can take one away. Once battles are initiated, you'll be faced in a 3-on-3 turn-based style system, with each group's leader being placed in the center, while the 2 demons are placed on each side to provide some extra cover. Once the leader is defeated, the enemy disappears from the map, even if the 2 side demons weren't taken down. One major change to combat is that random encounters have been swapped out with selectable battle options that appear on the overworld map for the player to choose from. There are free battles which are generally used for grinding, a few free time events which can impact parts of the game or add some extra development, and mandatory battles, linked to the main progression of the plot. Regardless of which option you select, most of these will come with their own set of conditions the player must meet to win. Overall, these aren't overly complicated and do add a little variation. I don't find them to be enough to get past the lull of repetition that I often encounter during the later stages of the game, and personally, I'm not the biggest fan of how encounters were handled here. I feel that the range of exploration and types of battles became limited rather quickly. And if a player is stuck on a boss, they'll be forced to repeat the same free battles with very minor changes, which makes playing the game in short spurts better at times. I can understand how this approach could be viewed as more user-friendly, and while it does amplify the feeling of being isolated, I don't think that this was the actual intention. Adding a bit more options to choose from would have helped mitigate this, but overall, I missed random encounters a lot. That being said, one of the most discussed parts of the Devil Survivor series is how they emphasize the various strategies that can be employed through their party and skill set customization. Each party member is given up to 7 customizable skills. These skills can be used while moving around the map during each turn or in battle. They can also be altered to a great extent to provide a wide range of custom builds. The sheer level of options there are to alter these skill sets is what makes combat truly shine, as you're able to approach enemies with a handful of different strategies, each bringing their own advantages and drawbacks for the player to utilize or overcome. Needless to say, your experience is going to greatly vary based on how you choose to set these up. From both a player and reviewer perspective, this is something that I find priceless and really boosts my views on the games higher. And although I think Devil Survivor 2 does a much better job at creating a more balanced environment, Devil Survivor 1 doesn't fall too far off. Skills themselves are pretty straightforward. There'll be 3 command skills primarily for attacking, 3 passive skills suited for support, and 1 race or auto skill which stands out amongst the other 2. Race and auto skills differ a bit between humans and demons. These allow the holder of the skill to capitalize on several opportunities to provide some heavy support for your party. While demons will have their race skills locked, all human allies will be able to freely change these at any point, which plays into the number of custom builds available. However, skill sets and their customizations don't end there. In fact, you can even argue that it's just beginning, as Devil Survivor adds another mechanic known as skill cracking to expand the level of customization even further. This is, in essence, the way to unlock new skills, by selecting the skill of an enemy at the start of the battle and defeating them to add it to your own arsenal of moves. Of course, there are a few requirements that need to be met to actually crack the skill selected. For starters, only the character who selected the skill must defeat the demon in order to unlock it. On top of that, defeating just the group leader won't unlock the skill, unless that is the demon selected. This is a pretty reasonable compromise, however I can see it being a distraction in the early stages of the game when your party's overall level is low. In order to prevent the player from breaking the game entirely, there are a few restrictions when it comes to assigning skills to party members though. Skills can only be assigned to one person, and stat level requirements for stronger skills are set. This maintains a fair balance as you progress. While you may not have complete control over how stat points are distributed for every character, you'll at least get control for the main protagonist himself. It's not the most ideal situation, but I can overlook this for the number of positives found in the customization and party options. And unless you absolutely want a certain character in your party, this shouldn't impact your experience too much. Although skill cracking in Devil Survivor 1 feels slightly incomplete when comparing it to Devil Survivor 2, it still does a great job allowing the player to freely build their group around what they prefer. By the way, incoming Devil Survivor 2 video dropping soon. Stay tuned for that one. While this may seem like a lot, it's laid out for the player in a simple manner that's easy to grasp on the first try. Probably better than how this video explained it. The best part is, this allows players of all skill levels to freely develop their own unique strategy for the game while still maintaining an even playing field. But really, while I may come across my issues with how diverse the battles are themselves, the level of customization more than makes up for this in several occasions. Before we wrap things up, I wanted to highlight the 3DS port that came out several years later. This port would include additional content with new paths, an 8th day, a few more features, and the best voice acting you've ever heard. Personally, I don't find overclock to be a necessary port. I mean, it's better and I enjoy it, but I don't know if it's enough to really warrant its own release. At times, it's more so just filling in the holes than adding any new or substantial content in my opinion. Because of this, I don't think that overclocked, or any of the DS to 3DS ports for that matter, deserve their own individual ranking or video. For the most part, the added features are things I appreciate, but believe should have already been included in the original game. Both the Demon Compendium and difficulty settings are standard features that should always be present in any Megami Tensei game, and while the new demons are more than welcomed, 20 isn't really enough to fix the issues I found with the limited options. The new alignments are fine, but I think I enjoy the alignment pass on the original DS version better. Then again, I haven't gotten every single option, so this could change over time. Don't get me wrong, if I had to choose between the DS or 3DS port, I'm going to go with the 3DS version, especially because it fixes the screen freezing issues. But if you can't get your hands on the 3DS port, you'll be fine with the original version as is in my opinion. When it comes down to it, it's easy to understand why the game is such a fan favorite. Is it my favorite? No, but it's up there. To me, Devil Survivor more so stands out as a good introduction game to the Megami Tensei franchise. Sure, there are other titles that you can start your Megami Tensei journey with, Shin Megami Tensei 4, Persona 4 or 5, Nocturne. Most of these are great games in their own right and good starting points depending on the player. But I feel that Devil Survivor edges these games out due to its bold attitude to design a game meant for all kinds of players. While it's not a powerhouse like the others, it does offer a great story with an amazing atmosphere, challenge, and innovative mechanics that work on many levels. It just feels like the embodiment of what an all-inclusive game should be. It's honestly baffling that a third installment to the Devil Survivor series hasn't been rumored, but that's besides the point. As for my ranking, Devil Survivor 1 is a solid A for me. I do see myself coming back and playing this again at some point in the next year or two. And who knows, maybe I'll enjoy it even more than I do now. Anyways, let me know what you think of Devil Survivor in the comments below. Also, let me know what MegaTen game you would like me to review next. Thanks for watching, and keep on gaming.